Hi, good morning, everyone. Welcome to our Level Up webinar, and thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Dawn Lane, and I am the Program Manager for the Massey Learning Institute, MLI, as we like to say. So in preparation for our webinar today, which is entitled A Quick Introduction to Positive Intelligence, Mental Fitness, and Why This Matters, I began to do some research. I began reading and I saw this statement on the Positive Intelligence website, which read, "Your mind is your best friend, but it can also be your worst enemy." So I began to research areas talking about synapses and stuff. Yeah, it was really getting a bit too deep for me, but I really focused in on the areas of your inner sage and your inner saboteurs and our ability to build our mental muscle. I was really interested in the area of being in a state of positivity, which would help me in leading a less stressful life. And I found it all so intriguing. It was quite a lot, but I was all over the place with it because I really wanted to learn more. And I thought the best place and the best person would be our presenter today, Ms. Emily Chiwa. And let me tell you a little bit about Emily. Emily is an ICF certified professional coach, a certified positive intelligence coach, a chartered financial analyst, and she also holds an MBA. Emily is the founder, managing director, and principal coach with Your Life Path. And I'm sure she'll share a bit more as we move along today. But I want to welcome Emily now to share wealth of knowledge she has on this topic. Welcome, Emily.
Thank you, Dawn. Nice introduction. Yes, and let's just dive right into the presentation today. So I'm going to share my screen and let me know when you're seeing it. There we go. Good. I think we should be up there. All right. So everyone, we're going to talk today about positive intelligence. And this is a quick introduction. So you're going to get a flavor of what positive intelligence is, what it does, how it impacts your mental fitness, and why this all matters. I'm sure you have a clue on why it matters. And all of this is based on the work of Shazad Shamin. And this is a book if you're ever interested in looking it up. Or there's a website as well, positiveintelligence.com. And you can find more information there as well. So the objectives for today are as follows. We're going to talk a little bit about our tendency as human beings to have a negative bias, because we do. And we'll talk a little bit about that and kind of, put some attention there. We're going to learn why a positive emotional state is important for our mental well-being. Again, it seems obvious, but sometimes, it's good again to put a little attention there, and so that we can also get intentional about our emotional state and become aware of when our emotional state is not where we want it to be and how to shift it. So we're going to talk about being able to learn to shift towards a more positive emotional state when we're not in a state that is going to support what we are trying to achieve at any particular point in time. So mental fitness is defined as our ability to respond to life's challenges with a positive versus a negative mindset. Seems simple, right? However, when we feel challenged, that is actually the hardest time for us to sometimes be positive in that moment. So it's learning about how we can shift ourselves when we feel that stress or that challenge come on, and being able to say, okay, all right, I notice, I notice all these negative feelings that I'm having towards this, but being able to recognize how that we're there and how to shift out of that. So positive intelligence, as I said earlier, is based on research by Shazad Shamin. He's a Stanford lecturer, among many other designations that he has. And what his research did was combine best practices in neuroscience, performance science, positive psychology, and cognitive psychology, and created a set of tools and techniques that really improves our mental fitness. And when we improve our mental fitness, what that does, it impacts our work success, it impacts our relationships, and it impacts our happiness / well-being. So it's really, really important for us to get to understand this thing so that we can feel better despite whatever is happening in our daily lives. So what it does also, it provides a measure. So on the positive intelligence site, you can actually do a PQ score and get a measure of how much your mind is serving you versus sabotaging you, or so that's the piece that Dawn was just saying about our mind can be our best friend or worst enemy. So we can actually find the score and see where we are at present and do the practices so that we can actually improve that score. So to understand this a little bit better, let's talk about stress. Now, everyone can relate because we all feel stress at some point, right? And what happens when we feel stress is we tend to have a set of different emotional responses to stress. So most of us experience stress as negative. And the thing is, actually, we all need a level of stress to function optimally. So if we look at this graph here that shows the level of stress, if we have too much stress, we are actually distress, and we'll have our impaired functioning over here. If we have too little stress, we will also have impaired functioning. We would not want, we would not feel motivated to do or take actions. So what we actually need is to realize that stress, there's a good element to stress, and how to harness that so that we have the just right level where we can perform optimally, as the graph shows, right? Good. So what's happening when we're distressed? What happens on an emotional level is we can feel the survivor mind kicking in. So we actually feel like something is physically going to affect us. So it's like if our very lives are in danger, it can be as extreme as that. And that is what happens when our survivor mind kicks in. We have the fight or flight response, and what that does, it creates a whole host of responses in our body, but really and truly, we're thinking survival. So therefore, the ability to utilize the higher level executive functioning levels in our mind becomes impaired, and we become more reactive, less creative, we have less empathy, and as a result, what we produce when we are in that state is not our optimal or our best. So it often causes to all of these feelings, these negative feelings tend to have us feel very judgmental of the situation, people, or ourselves, and we will have a host of negative feelings that are accompanied by that. So that is what is going on inside of us when we are distressed. And the point is, what do we do about it? You understand? So here we go. What should we do instead? So when stressed and we're realizing these negative emotions are impacting us, we can use the tools from PQ to convert the fight or flight response so that we can actually access this sage part of us. So let me explain that a little bit for you, right? So basically, in our survivor mind, we have these 10 saboteurs, right? So these saboteurs, let's look at them over here. They are just basically, sometimes comes from our personality, the way we are. It comes from the way we learn to cope with things as we were growing up, going through school, etc. However, we learn to deal with stress or difficult situations. It's a matter of, it becomes an automatic response that we have, or an automatic reaction that we have. So these are, call it habits, maybe how we've been socialized and all of that. All of these contribute to these saboteurs, which is what Szilárd found in his research. And when we break it down across the spectrum of all humans on Earth, basically, it comes down to these 10 that we have in some form or fashion. So most of us have about 2 or 3 that tend to rule the show, like it's our go-to ways of coping. And we all have the judge, which is universal. So the judge is the universal one. Then there are names like the controller, the avoider, the hyperachiever, the pleaser, the stickler, hypervigilant, and so on, victim, restless. These are the names. And just by the very names, I think most of us, when I call those names out, can identify with 1 or 2 of those and recognize that already in ourselves. That is a tendency that we have. And recognize that the tendency occurs especially when we feel distressed or when we feel challenged. So they come to us as coping mechanisms because that's the way we learn to get through them in the past, which may not be serving us in the present. So the next thing to know is we have these sage powers. Oops, I need to go back, sorry. So the sage powers now, for some reason, the other one isn't disappearing, sorry about that. But the powers are like the names of them: empathy, the navigate power, the innovate power, the explore power, the activate power. So it gets us to do things, take fierce action when we need to, be fearless in our approaches, explore. We can have a lot of curiosity. We can ask a lot of questions, navigate, purpose-driven. We understand where we're going, values-driven, innovate, obviously want to be creative, find creative solutions to the problems or challenges we're having. And of course, empathy at the root helps us to understand the situation, not just from a logical stance, but also from an emotional stance, because humans are all emotional beings, and we must recognize that in how we approach things. So what does the sage mind give us? It gives us bigger picture thinking, greater number of perspectives or viewpoints, and therefore more options. So when we are, again, coming from the automatic survivor part of our minds, we may tend to see things very tunnel vision. We may not widen our scope and see other options that are available where we're looking for them. Then there's access to, of course, the empathy circuitry. So we have that, which will help us to get again, improve perspective and also gain connection and collaboration from people we may need to work with. So therefore more open, more collaborative, and more strategic, long-term as well as short-term. We're not only looking to survive, we are looking also in the longer term. So these are the things that we get from our sage mind, which basically shuts down when we are in a survivor mind. So that's again another important reason or something I want you to note from this as to why we want to learn to switch, right? So to counteract this negative bias, what do? We must create new neural pathways that help us to access the sage mind and the sage perspective. Why new neural pathways? Because remember, I just told you earlier, the saboteur way of thinking are automatic. They are automatic, habitual things. So the pathways that get us there is like instant, automatic. We don't have to think about it. We just go there. The new neural pathways are created by practice. So if we want to learn to become more in sage, we must practice, not just have a discussion about it and say, okay, yeah, that's great, but practice so that we learn how to find the access to that part of us when we need it. Okay, so let's do a little practice. I invite you now, wherever you are, to do this exercise with me. So I want you to think of something that currently triggers or distresses you. So just bring it to mind, something that is in front of you on your desk, something that you're working on, have to deal with, and it's creating some level of distress. Could be someone that you work with that is difficult for you to manage. So as you think of that, notice the thoughts and feelings that are coming up for you. So there might be negative judgment thoughts, there might be unpleasant feelings. So just name them for yourself to kind of be aware that these are the thoughts and the feelings associated with them that this situation brings to you when you have to deal with it. And now that you have it in mind and you're aware of it, I'd like you to, we're now going to start a practice to release those thoughts. And by doing a simple practice of taking 2 fingers and you rub them very gently, very slowly. And basically focus on the sensation that you're getting between those 2 fingers. And as you do that, take some breaths. And just keep focusing on the fingers. If the thoughts come back, or the feelings come back, or even the thought that this is stupid comes, release them and just continue this gentle motion. The idea here is that we are we're coming out of our heads and into our bodies, which helps us to gain access to the other part of our mind. So it disconnects a little bit the automatic. And so now if you bring your mind back to that problem or challenge, see if you can notice any new perspective that may have come from just that moment of reflective time or that moment of shifting. Is there a potential gift or opportunity with this challenge that you haven't thought of before? And from that place, how might you respond differently? So I'll give you a minute to maybe take a note of that and explain what we just did or what we just covered. So in summary, as humans, we are wired to survive. This means when we experience something as threatening, we see danger and our automatic reaction is fight or flight. The survivor mind causes us to have this negative bias because we are wired to survive. So some of us feel that we are often very negative. It's just human to be that way sometimes. And we can learn ways to shift out of that. But that bias is it's a natural part of us being human. So it's nothing wrong. It's just something that we can notice. And if it doesn't serve us, something we can therefore work on changing. So the thing to note is that we function better when we are in a positive mental state. So despite the negative bias, when we are in a positive mental state, we have access to all of these natural abilities that we currently have in our minds, but get shut down when we have too much of that survivor mind going on. So when our bodies feel calm and yet energetic, when we are breathing deeply and our minds are clear, that is when we can perform in any aspect of our lives at our best. So the key now is to learn how to access that positive mental state and to work towards being in that positive mental state more than in the negative state. So positive intelligence offers a practice and tools that once used over time would create those neural pathways to permanently change your mental state from a negative to a more positive one. With the PQ tools, as I mentioned, you can actually measure your current level of negative bias, and you can actually do a saboteur assessment as well to learn more about your top saboteurs. The key thing that I always say to everyone is that without awareness, we cannot change anything. So by doing the saboteur assessment, you get a sense and a report that tells you all of this information. And all of this is accessible on the Positive Intelligence website. With knowledge, awareness, and practice, you can sustainably shift your mind to a more positive mental state so that you can have more success, more happiness, and better relationships all around. And that really is my quick intro. So now we can stop for questions.
That was fantastic, Emily. So I really want to thank you, and I want to thank you for taking us through that simple exercise. Simple, yeah, I really like that idea of having that ability to build new pathways, you know? So that's a nice, simple exercise. And I found it was very calming. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to hand you over to Renee Barnett, and we will open the floor for questions and just see pretty much really and truthfully how we can learn a bit more through the answers that you're going to be giving us. Renee?
Thank you, Dawn. Good morning, everyone, and thank you so much, Emily.
You're welcome.
All right, so our first question this morning. Is it really possible to be positive all the time?
No, it's not. Short answer, no. Because as I mentioned, we have a negative bias. So I think what we want to do is not have anyone feel like just because you feel negative at times that something is wrong with you. Of course, we will feel the whole range of emotions. And as I was saying in the presentation, the idea is to not stay in negative emotions longer than we need to. So if we have a negative response to something, notice that, recognize what that negative emotion might be asking us to do or in the situation or to become aware of, and then learn to shift ourselves away from that negative to a more sage-like response in terms of, okay, what can I do? You know, what can I learn here? What can I do? What is the opportunity? What might be the gift? So it's not positive. It's not possible, sorry, to be in a positive state all the time. And that's not what we want because it's not human. You know, we have a range. We have our ups and downs.
Okay, thank you for sharing that. It's almost unnatural to be positive all the time.
Absolutely.
All right, we have our next question here coming in from Lisa. How do we train ourselves out of the mindset that everything worth having must come from hard work? Why can't we work in a relaxed atmosphere and gain success? And she followed on and she's saying it's often drummed into us that nothing worth having comes easy.
Nothing worth. So that's a mindset in itself, right? That's a belief system. Nothing worth having comes easy. Okay. So the thing is, I think it's important for us to break down words and understand the impact that words have on our experience of life and experience of what is happening. So if we believe that nothing worth having comes easy, then everything would feel hard or difficult. And that's not very sage-like if you think of it, right? So how do we train our mind? One of the ways actually is doing what I just explained to you in the positive intelligence intro, which is to recognize, okay, if I'm thinking something is hard, like I would remember when I was younger, people used to say like math is hard. And if you thought math is hard, you're going to have a hard time learning it. But if you thought math was fun, you're going to have a different experience. It's the same information, and you're probably going to have more fun doing it. So I would say start by reframing that hard. Maybe find the parts of things that you enjoy, because nothing worth having, I assume there are things about it that you actually enjoy and want to do and experience. So maybe find ways to reframe that, and also do the PQs on that idea of, is it hard or can I find a different way of expressing this? Because I believe things worth achieving might take a lot of work, sure, but it's not hard because I'm enjoying it. I'm getting a lot of fulfillment out of it. So yeah, I'm doing a lot of work to get there, but is it hard really? It's how you think about it. I hope that helps, Lisa.
Thank you so much. Interesting perspective. Change the perspective. Okay. All right. Thank you so much for that. Moving on to our next question here. Coming from Carrie or Carrie, how do you deal with persons who are triggers constantly?
Use them as teachers is my short answer. So people who are triggers are here to teach us something, either about ourselves or to improve our ability to manage ourselves in different situations. So they are triggering us. Sometimes people trigger us because they are mirrors. They show us parts of ourselves that we kind of deny. So it's a place of awareness, of gaining greater awareness as to, okay, what about this person is so triggering? And it also helps us to gain skills. So in terms of better communication skills, or better ways of working with or working through challenges, it also helps us to gain potentially different perspectives. So in positive intelligence, we learn this game where to work with people who challenge us, we think of the 10% that can be right in what they're saying or what their way of doing things is. So when having to interact with them, maybe think of the 10% that you can agree with, even though you don't agree with everything that's being said, and start with that. So say, Emily, I think this, I can agree with what this particular part of what you're saying makes sense, and blah, 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 blah. So that way you gain more buy-in from the person. You're not saying no, you're not objecting to everything, you're not judging them, or they're not feeling judged by you, even though you may be. So that's another thing, might be needing to work on your judgment of them so that you can be open to that greater perspective, but also try the 10% game. So even if you don't agree with everything, see the 10% that you can always find that you can agree with, and then see if you can build a connection with them from there. Hope that helps.
Great, thank you. Thank you for that.
Sure.
Lisa also responded to say thanks, that it did help your response.
Oh, you're welcome, Lisa.
All right, moving on down to our next question. Can positivity be toxic?
I think it can be if we force it. If we force it. So if we deny that we are having a negative response and trying to pretend that everything is okay, that can feel and be toxic. So I think it's important to be real about what we are feeling at any given moment. Acknowledge to ourselves, I'm having a hard time here. I'm challenged in this way, or I'm feeling angry, sad, depressed, whatever. Because trying to put a dressing on it or just pretend that we're fine when we're not is quite toxic. So even in supporting others, sometimes out of a good natured way, we tend to push aside their feeling and say, somebody's having a bad day, don't worry, man, tomorrow will be better. I mean, that is true, but maybe just give them a little air to say, okay, yes, I know it can be hard at times, like have that empathy response, be real, so that we are not just making people feel like it's not safe to be human, which is that we experience the whole range of emotions. So just being aware that, it can be toxic if we are not allowing or sensitive to the whole range in terms of how we respond to it. Yeah.
All right, interesting. A good follow-on question from that. Are then negative emotions ever good? Possibly.
Yes, yes, they are good because it gives us a sign that something needs to be done or something needs our attention. So if we're not feeling a negative emotion or if we don't feel the emotion, we won't recognize that, hey, I need to either check myself or I'm getting really upset or frustrated or having a hard time understanding this situation here, and gives us an opportunity to step back, take that breath, do a PQ rep, and come again. So the negative emotions allows us that opportunity to reset, and it tells us that something isn't right. So it gives us that warning sign. The thing about negative emotions is not staying and wallowing in them. If we stay and wallowing them, they will swallow us up literally and have us always be or feel like we must be in that survivor mode, that we can't get out of the situation. So it's learning to transform, to recognize, then transform the emotion to a more positive state, not pretend that it's not there and try to pretend to be positive, but we're not really. So I hope that clears it up too in terms of what we do with our negative emotions when we experience them.
Awesome, thank you. We have an anonymous comment here. The person said, wow, that is interesting regarding positivity being toxic. If we're not genuine, the person says, I like that. Thank you.
Welcome.
All right, moving on nicely. So what about if you're diagnosed with like depression or anxiety? Can you build that positivity muscle?
Yeah, I think if you're diagnosed with something like depression or anxiety, it's of course important for you to continue to use the whatever support you get from maybe your therapist or and so because sometimes we do need medication to assist us because there are imbalances for whatever reason. And I think it's really healthy to recognize when we need the help, to seek it out, and to follow the directives that the directives or the support that we get from therapy and otherwise. In my experience, I mean, I would have had people that I coached at times who were diagnosed with depression, went to their psychiatrist, got their medication, and stayed on with coaching because the psychiatrist was like doing the conversation, having the ability to talk through things and to evolve in terms of the coaching is still supportive of their overall well-being. However, the medication was helpful to get them through this particular challenge. And maybe in time you can probably come off of it with more and more practices like mindfulness and so on. But I would never say to not, check, have all aspects checked to make sure that you're doing the best for you.
Ready? Thank you so much for that advice.
Mm-hmm.
Moving along nicely. How do we weaken our internal negative thoughts to ensure that it doesn't hinder us from achieving our goals and reaching our fullest potential?
How do we what?
Weaken.
Weaken.
Yeah.
Oh, weaken. Right. So the thing with our negative thoughts is they never actually go away entirely. If we have a tendency, like as I said, we all have the judge, we all have some 2 or 3 of the saboteurs that are stronger in us. We will always tend to, it will be our go-to way of thinking. What becomes stronger is our ability to recognize that we are in that state, that we are judging the situation, we're judging this person, we're having a negative response or reaction. Pull to be able to pull back so that we can again access the sage and come again from that perspective. So the point is that the negative, depending on the issue at hand or the thing that triggers us, it will never necessarily go away. It may lessen with practice again, because as we practice these like the fingers and getting understanding getting into our bodies and not following our triggered minds as much. As we practice those practices, or as we do those practices every day over time, what happens is there's a PQ score. So the ability for us to manage the triggers become improved, but it only becomes improved with practice. So me talking to you about this and you doing this a couple of times, great, or you might forget about it. If you actually go through the program and do the practices for a period of time, 6 weeks, even longer, because it's like the gym. Think of it like building muscle. If you go to the gym and you exercise, people like to work out. Some people like to work out, say for carnival. They want to be healthy for particular events or whatever. So they get all healthy, they get all trained, and they're looking great. But then they stop the gym, they go back to eating all the wrong foods and whatnot, and wonder, somehow wonder why it is, we're not there. So it's the same thing with the mind. It's about practicing. So doing the steps regularly is what I would say would be what would help to weaken the ability for us to manage which direction we go. So every time something happens, we have a choice. We go here, we go there. When it's automatic, we just go there all the time. When we start to have choice, we'll be able to stop here and decide, do I go here or do I go there? And then over time, we tend to go this way more and more as we practice.
All right, thank you so much for that one.
Yeah.
Our next question. So what about if you have been stuck in survival mode for way too long? What advice can you give?
Well, the first thing I would say, if you recognize you're stuck in survival mode for way too long, that's great, because now you can change it. The only way that things get changed is when you decide that it's going to be changed. So if you decided, I'm tired of this survival mode, it's time to change it, tick. First step taken. Next step, do something. So next step, I just gave you some tools, look it up, start practicing, get yourself in some program, or do something, an accountability buddy, whatever you need to start practicing, learning about ways to practice to shift your mind away from that survival response all the time, and also becoming very aware that these things happen to us during the day. So it's not like you can go and we can't just, it's not a switch to flip, but rather something that we cultivate over time. So I'm reacting, I'm being very reactive. Stop, pause, do something, come again. 10 minutes later, you might find yourself right back there. Stop, pause, do the practice, come again. That's how we practice. It's not like a morning practice or an afternoon practice. While those things are great, this is a daily practice that happens all the time, because we don't know when things might happen that will affect us and affect the way we are responding. So cultivating also a kind of an introspective look back at your day kind of thing on a regular basis, to kind of say, okay, how did I do today? How many times was I in this survivor space? How many times did I get out of it? What would I like to do different tomorrow? So it will also help you to keep, that idea of continuous shifting, so that eventually one day you look back and realize, oh my gosh, I'm in this survivor space much less than, and it's good. I feel good.
All right, thank you so much for that response.
Mm-hmm.
Our next question.
Mm-hmm.
Is it often easier for us to react than to respond in various situations, what would you recommend we do to move to a place where we can respond and not react?
Yes, it's very easy to react. It takes nothing to react, right? We just react. So yeah, the thing is when that reaction isn't helping us, so we see that we're reacting and we're not getting the results that we want, that's when we recognize that, okay, I need to do something again that's different. And again, the number one thing that I hope everybody is recognizing from this is to stop. So you feel yourself bubbling up, about to react, stop. Even if you started reacting and you realize, okay, I'm just stop. Anytime you notice, stop, take a breath, and come again. You know, even if the taking a breath and you realize, okay, you know what, I can't deal with this. I can't respond to you right now. I just need a couple minutes. Maybe get up, move around, and come again. So give yourself that space or opportunity as many times as you can to pause. If you can't literally stop the conversation, doing this in the middle of a reaction helps you to pause. So it's another way of just another thing you can just remember to do this or do this, anything that gives you an opportunity to reset mentally so that you can come again.
Sometimes you count to 10. I think I've heard that one before.
Yes. So what? Some people pinch themselves. You know, like just something to get you out of it. So you realize, okay, I'm being reactive. I don't want to be reactive. So yeah.
Great. You just mentioned the exercise. So if a person who might have missed it, can you go through the exercise with us again?
Sure. Basically, in a nutshell, if you feel that you are having a negative response, or if you recognize yourself feeling very triggered or very stressed in any situation, recognize that there's a lot of negative emotions at play, or maybe negative thinking at play. So just pause, notice what the emotions are or the thoughts are that you're having, and it helps to just bring those to awareness so you recognize what's going on inside. And then you do the practice that I mentioned, like the fingers. So take the two fingers, rub them very gently, focus on the fingers. So while you're doing that, you're sort of releasing those negative thoughts and feelings a bit, disassociating from them a bit. And then as you do that, you could probably take some deep breaths and just, again, keep the focus there, feel the sensations. It's important to feel the sensations. And then come back to the situation and see if you can have access to a different part of your mind, which is your sage mind, the prefrontal cortex, the empathy circuitry, so that you can look at it from a different perspective, see if there are things you missed, see if there's a gift or opportunity here that you, when you're triggered, you won't have seen. So what is the gift or opportunity here? And then you can take action. And while I say that, and it sounds very long, you can actually learn to do that very quickly with practice.
Very calming too, very calming. Thank you.
Sure.
All right. Our next question. How can we measure our mental fitness? Is there like something we can do online or some kind of tool?
Yeah. So with positive intelligence, there's something called a PQ score. PQ stands for positive intelligence, like EQ stands for emotional intelligence. So PQ score, if you just look that up online, you should be able to get access to the assessment, and you can take it, and it will give you a response at that, a result based on your responses at the time. What's helpful is that what we say is when you take your PQ scores, you actually do it over a period of time. Because like if we're in a very relaxed state on a weekend or on vacation, our PQ scores might be really good. It scores out of 100. So it looks at what you want to do is you want to get the bigger number, the better the score, meaning the percent of time your mind is in a positive versus a negative state. So you want the score to be higher. And really and truly, it's just another tool of knowing. I mean, I think we tend to know already how we are on a day-to-day, or we should know more or less, how we tend to respond, or we can get feedback from those around us in terms of how they observe us as responding, to know whether we feel we are more likely to be positive versus a negative or in a state. That helps us to see the opportunities or the possibilities versus just the challenges or the problems. And so it's just another tool to help us know where we are. Yeah. You can access it online right there at positiveintelligence.com.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
Right, coming down the line, another question for you here.
Mm-hmm.
Can you boost your ability to command your mind, to quiet your saboteur, and amplify the sage region?
Can you what? Boost?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, yes, with the practices that Shazad Shamin teaches in the Positive Intelligence program, definitely teaches you how to do just that. Because the whole premise of the research is that the more we can get ourselves into a positive emotional state, the more likely we would feel we would be more successful at whatever we do. We would be better in the way we relate to others, and we would also have a better sense of fulfillment, happiness, or well-being. So yes, it is very possible to do that. It takes practice, like any good thing, as I mentioned earlier, with just regular fitness, physical fitness, mental fitness is the same. It takes practice and intention, and yes, it can be done.
Thank you. Thank you for that response. Simply put, yes, it can be done.
Yeah.
All right, back to positive intelligence. What are the 5 powers of positive intelligence?
Oh, there aren't any powers in positive intelligence, but there are your sage power. So what he calls the sage powers are maybe what is being referred to. So the sage powers are empathy, innovate, navigate, activate, and explore. Those are the 5 powers of the sage, which we all possess. We have all of those abilities, if you want to call it that, as we go with the analogy of the sage. What positive intelligence does, it helps us to access those powers more readily. Because, again, like we were saying in the presentation and throughout, when we are triggered and in our survivor part of the region of the mind, we tend to have less ability to access our sage powers. So what positive intelligence teaches us is how to learn to access the powers that we already possess, and that can help us to optimize our abilities and our performance in whatever sphere that we are working in or acting in. So there are no powers in positive intelligence, just to be clear.
Well, thanks for clarifying that. Thank you.
Sure.
Our next question, before we hand back over to our host, Dawn.
Mm-hmm.
Do you find that a lot of people are reaching out to build mental fitness? I know it was kind of a hot topic throughout the pandemic and focusing on your wellness and such like. How do you find it now? Are people still reaching out? or is it dwindling? What do you think?
Well, that's a good question. I think it's mixed. I mean, I think there are always a set of people that will reach out to improve their who are just eager to learn ways to improve their professional and personal from a personal and professional standpoint. So I feel like, is it increasing or decreasing? I don't know. Maybe there was more of an interest during the pandemic because a lot of us were feeling so distressed with the opening back finally, and us being able to do things and, you know, find other ways to manage our well-being, if you want to call it that. So we have, you know, more access to the outdoors, we have the social connections and social activities. All of those things help us to feel more balanced and feel better. So I think during the pandemic, because we didn't have access to those things, maybe there might have been a greater interest because we were feeling distressed as a society at large. And so maybe to some extent there might be less, but I think there'll always be the ones who are seeking, you know, better for themselves, or recognizing that, you know, they want to go deeper for different reasons, or they see the benefit of developing the mind to its full potential. Because I mean, why not? It's ours to be developed, so why not? So yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Emily. We hand back over now to Dawn to just wrap us up. Thank you so
Thanks,
much.
Renee. Thanks for the questions, Renee.
You're welcome.
Right. So, Emily, I don't know what it was, but I did that. I kind of like this, you know.
It's great, Dawn. It's great.
You are correct. It is great. It's very calming, you know. I was just there, you kind of zone out. Yeah, I'm going to practice that for sure. I want to thank Renee for putting the questions to you. And Emily, I want to thank you for being here today and for sharing what was a quick introduction to positive intelligence, mental fitness, and why it matters. And I really hope that we can offer a full program, a full workshop, where you can really take us through the tools that can help us to begin our practice. I mean, you gave us a perfect one here, but I know that there are a lot more, and it is an intensive program. So I'm hoping that we could eventually see this as a workshop where we can come and practice and possibly do it face to face, as everything is opening up now. So thanks so much, Emily.
You are so welcome, Dawn. It's been my pleasure being here and being a part of MLI's webinar and hearing the beautiful questions from the audience and working with you guys. I really enjoyed this time, and I'm most importantly, you know, practice, guys. Insight is just 20% of any Dawn is nodding, any learning that you get, 20% from insight, but 80% from practice. So practice what you learn and really make it work for you.
Great. You know, Emily, I nod because I'm agreeing. I'm agreeing here with you. So thank you so much. So, you know, everyone, our lovely audience, we've come to the end of our MLI webinar for today. I want to thank everyone for joining us and for submitting your questions. Look out in the coming months for June for our programs, Understanding Financial Statements, Beginners Excel, Data Analytics, Business Communication, Critical Thinking, and we have another webinar that comes off on the 24th, an MLI webinar. It is along the lines of our 100-year celebrations, being a force for good. It is a panel discussion, so we look out and hope that you can join us same time, 10 to 11, and we really look forward to seeing you there. Until, take care, have a fantastic rest of day. Bye-bye for now.
Bye.